Good evening, and welcome back to Footnotes and Folly. Tonight we sweep up the last of the poems, the three odd, orphaned pieces that close out Shakespeare's non-dramatic verse, and they make a curious little museum. First, A Lover's Complaint, the strange, bitter poem printed at the very back of the 1609 quarto of the sonnets, in which a ruined young woman tells the story of the smooth-talking man who undid her. Second, The Passionate Pilgrim, and here I must be honest with you straight away, this was a cheeky little collection a publisher slapped Shakespeare's name on in 1599 to sell copies, though only a handful of the poems in it are actually his. We will sort the real from the borrowed as we go. And third, The Strangest Bird in the Whole Aviary, the Phoenix and the Turtle, a short, severe, almost mathematical funeral hymn for two ideal lovers, unlike anything else he ever wrote. 3 poems, 1 evening, and then the plays. Let us begin with The Weeping Woman by the River. A Lover's Complaint belongs to an old form, the complaint, a poem of lament spoken by a wronged figure, and Shakespeare frames it as something overheard. A narrator, walking in the country, catches the sound of grief and stops to watch.
From a hillside nearby, an echo of weeping came down to me, a sad, doubled sound of sorrow off the hollow ground, and I lay down to listen and to watch. Soon I saw the source. A young woman, her beauty not yet gone but worn and weathered by grief, sat tearing up papers and breaking rings and flinging the pieces into the river that ran below her. On her head a straw hat shaded a face down which the tears ran. She would stare at nothing, then suddenly aim her wet eyes at the sky, then down at the ground, then nowhere at all, as grief drove them. Her hair hung loose. She pulled letters from a basket beside her, read them, sighed, tore them, and wept. She broke the seals and rings that had been love tokens and gave them all to the muddy water, as if to drown the memory with the thing. Nearby, an old man who had once seen court and city, now content to graze his cattle in the fields, heard her sorrow and came slowly down to sit beside her, and gently, as an old man may, asked her the cause of so much grief, hoping that the telling of it might ease a little of its weight.
Notice the frame Shakespeare builds. We never meet the young woman directly, we watch a narrator watch her, and then we hear her story second-hand told to a kindly old stranger. That double distance is deliberate. It keeps us at the remove of witnesses, not judges. And the image that opens it is unforgettable, a woman methodically destroying her love letters and rings, feeding them one by one to a river, as though grief could be posted downstream. Whether the poem is wholly Shakespeare's has been argued, but that opening tableau is the work of a major hand. Now the old man has asked, she begins to answer.
She begins by painting him, the young man who undid her. He was, she says, beauty itself, barely past boyhood, his cheeks still smooth, and everything about him drew the eye and the heart. He could ride, he could argue, he could sing, whatever grace he turned his hand to seemed to have been invented for him alone. His tongue was the real danger. He could make any argument sound like simple truth, win any wager of words, turn the listening mind whichever way he pleased. Men trusted him on sight, women could not look away. And he knew it. He had been the ruin of others before, her hearts given to him and broken, plain proof of what he was lay all around for anyone willing to see it, and she had seen it. She tells the old man plainly that she was not ignorant of his reputation. She knew the wreckage, she had every warning. That, she says, is the bitterest part of all. She walked in with her eyes open. For all his gifts, the danger was never that he was hidden, it was that knowing exactly what he was changed nothing at all.
What raises this above the usual seduced and abandoned complaint is her clear sight. She is not a naive girl who was fooled, she is a clever woman who saw the whole con coming and was taken anyway. Shakespeare gives her the full inventory of his charms, the looks, the horsemanship, the unbeatable tongue, and then has her say, in effect, and I knew he'd already broken others, and I knew he'd break me. The poem is far more interested in that helpless clarity than in any simple warning against rakes. It is the same dark territory as the Dark Lady sonnets, loving against your own better knowledge.
Then she tells how he won her not by force, but by a long, practiced performance of sincerity. He came to her with a whole treasury of love, tokens that other women had given him, and laid them at her feet as though they were freely his to give. He had a speech for every doubt. When words ran short, he wept, and his tears, she says, were the most convincing thing about him, a grief so well acted that it seemed to come from the bottom of a true heart. He swore that all those earlier conquests had meant nothing, that she alone had finally taught him what love was, that she would be the one to reform him. He even dressed his lust in the language of religion, making his desire sound like devotion. Against all of it, against her own knowledge of what he was, she finally yielded. And he did exactly what he had always done. Having won her, he was gone. The poem ends not with her cursing him, but with the line that has unsettled readers for 4 centuries. She confesses that even now, ruined and weeping by this river, if that same false young man came back with those same false tears, she would fall for him all over again. The complaint closes on that wound left open, refusing the comfort of a lesson learned.
And there is the twist that makes the poem modern and strange. We expect the wronged woman to end in righteous anger, or at least in hard-won wisdom. Instead, Shakespeare gives her a devastating honesty. She would do it again. The tears that fooled her, she admits, would fool her a second time, because the wanting was never about being deceived, it survives the truth. It is a bleak and sentimental close, and it is why scholars who doubt the poem's quality in places rarely doubt the mind behind that ending. Loving the thing that destroys you, eyes wide open he kept circling back to it, in the sonnets and here. Now we leave the river and turn to the book a publisher tried to pass off as his. Now an act of honesty the title page never managed. In 1599 a printer named William Jagged put out a slim book of 20 short poems and stamped W. Shakespeare on the cover because Shakespeare's name, fresh off Venus and Adonis, sold books. The trouble is that only about 5 of the 20 are actually his. The rest were lifted from other living poets, or were simply anonymous, all bundled under his name to move copies. So let us do what Jagged would not, and sort the real from the borrowed.
The genuine Shakespeare and the collection we have in better form elsewhere. 2 of the pieces are early drafts of poems that would later stand in the sonnets. One is the version of what became Sonnet 138. When my love swears that she is made of truth, I believe her, though I know she lies. The wry, clear-eyed poem of 2 lovers who each know the other is lying about age and faithfulness, and who agree by unspoken treaty to keep flattering each other anyway, because comfortable lies are kinder than lonely truths. Another is the version of Sonnet 144. 2 loves I have of comfort and despair, the fair young man and the dark woman pulling at him like a good angel and a bad, with the sour suspicion that the 2 of them may have gone off together. 3 more poems in the book are simply sonnets cut straight out of his play Love's Labour's Lost. Those are the real Shakespeare here, and we have read their better selves already in this very series.
As for the rest, including the collection's single most beloved lyric, Crabbed Age and Youth Cannot Live Together, that lovely complaint of the young against the old and slow, the honest verdict of scholarship, is probably not his. It is charming, it is anthologized everywhere under his name to this day, and it is almost certainly by some other anonymous hand. I quote it gladly: Crabbed age and youth cannot live together. Youth is full of pleasure, age is full of care, but I credit it as attributed, not proven. Jagged, by the way, tried the same trick again in 1612 with a fatter edition, and this time Shakespeare, very much alive and unamused, made enough noise that his name was pulled from the title page. So even in his own century, this was the book everyone knew he hadn't really written.
And last, the strangest thing he ever wrote. In 1601, Shakespeare contributed a short poem to a collection called Love's Martyr, and it is unlike anything else in his work. Austere, abstract, almost mathematical, a funeral hymn for 2 birds who stand for perfect love. Parliament of birds is summoned to mourn. The phoenix, the bird of beauty and rebirth, and the turtle, dove, the bird of faithful love, have died together, and the poem celebrates the impossible thing their love achieved, that 2 beings could be so wholly one and yet remain 2. They were, in his famous phrase, 2 distinct division, none 2 and not 2 at the same time. Number itself was slain by them, he says. They were distance and no space. Reason, looking on, simply gives up. It cannot make the arithmetic work, a love in which 1 + 1 stays both 2 and 1, and reason confesses itself confounded and cries that love hath reason, reason none. The poem then closes with a short, bleak elegy. It calls the 3 notes the dirge. Beauty, truth, and rarity, it says, grace and simplicity, all lie here enclosed in ashes. The phoenix and the dove are gone, and the cruelest stroke, they left no children, leaving no posterity. This was married chastity, a love too perfect to reproduce itself, and so it ends absolutely, with the world the poorer and nothing left but a prayer for the dead.
People come to this poem expecting the lush, warm Shakespeare of the plays and the sonnets, and instead they hit this cold, gnomic, more like a piece of scholastic philosophy set to a bell. That is exactly why it fascinates. He takes the oldest cliché of love poetry, 2 hearts that beat as one, and pushes it past sentiment into pure paradox, a unity so total that counting breaks, that reason throws up its hands. And then he refuses the comfort of rebirth. The phoenix, the very bird that is supposed to rise from its ashes, here simply stays dead, childless, final. It is a poem about a love so ideal it could only end, never continue. Nobody is quite sure who the 2 lovers really were, and after 4 centuries the guessing has stopped mattering. What lasts is the strangeness. The one time Shakespeare wrote like a metaphysician, and left us a riddle with no key. And with 3 orphans, a ruined woman's complaint, a book of borrowed poems, and a riddle about 2 dead birds, the poetry is done. Stop and consider what that means. Over the series we have now read, in plain modern English, every one of the 154 sonnets, both great narrative poems, the sunlit Venus and Adonis and the dark rape of Lucrece, and tonight these last strange leftovers. The complete non-dramatic Shakespeare start to finish, in daylight. It has been, I confess, a particular pleasure. The poems are where he is most private, most himself, least hidden behind a character. But a man is not remembered for his poems. From here, Footnotes and Folly turns at last to the main event, the plays. 37 of them, comedies and histories, tragedies and late romances, each one rendered whole in plain modern English with, I'm afraid, my continued interruptions. We begin, fittingly, with one of the shortest and silliest, a farce of 2 sets of identical twins and a single very long bad day. Until then, mind the footnotes, and I shall see you in the theatre. In short, a lover's complaint, a clear-eyed woman seduced by false tears who admits she'd fall again. The Passionate Pilgrim, a 1,599 book sold under Shakespeare's name, only tilde 5 of 20 truly his. The Phoenix and the Turtle, an austere riddle hymn, 2 distincts, division none. With this, all 154 sonnets and every poem are done in plain English. Next, the 37 plays, beginning with the Comedy of Errors.